Out of all the perfection of wisdom sutras that the Buddha taught, we're looking at the Heart Sutra, which is one of the more concise perfection of wisdom sutras. Of course, there are the extensive, middling, and shorter versions available. So, although it is a few words, it is of vast and profound meaning. And the subject matter contained therein is required to be understood and practiced in order to achieve omniscience. If one does not understand the emptiness taught within the Heart Sutra, nor develops a perfection of wisdom that practices or realizes that emptiness, leave aside omniscience, one could also not attain the arhatship of a hero or solitary realizer either. Therefore, it's very important to understand these topics of emptiness and the perfection of wisdom realizing emptiness within this sutra.
Mm.
So far, we've covered the homage, the translator's homage, that is the name of the text. We've looked at the uncommon and common settings of the scene that you find at the beginnings of sutras. So the regular one that you always find at the beginning of sutras was that the Blessed One was staying at such and such a place with this community, and then the uncommon one of what he was meditating on at that time, and likewise of what Avalokiteshvara was doing at that time. So now we get into the actual body of the text. In some commentaries, when they present this uncommon setting of the scene, which we have in our first paragraph of the Heart Sutra, it breaks it down by describing the meditative stabilization which blessed somebody, the person who was blessed or inspired by that meditative stabilization, and the manner in which they were blessed or inspired, right? Essentially, blessed or inspired to give this discourse of the Heart Sutra. So, looking at the uncommon setting of the scene in that first paragraph, it starts with, at that time, the Blessed One entered the meditative concentration on the varieties of phenomena called the appearance of the profound. So, therefore, what came before that was the common setting of the scene that you find at the beginning of every sutra, right? Worded slightly differently according to the sutra, but basically, the Blessed One was staying at Rajgriha along with a community of monks. That's the common. So the unique one for this Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, that is the Heart Sutra, is that the Blessed One had entered the meditative concentration on the varieties of phenomena called the appearance of the profound. So basically, he had entered into equipoise on emptiness. So that is what is profound here.
Mm.
So emptiness is by nature profound. We call it emptiness, suchness, the mode of reality, or the way things are. And not only that, he had entered into a direct realization of emptiness, not a wisdom arisen from hearing or contemplation, not that sort of analysis, but a direct realization of emptiness, which is quite important in and of itself, because that is ultimately the realization of emptiness that we need to cultivate. So, sticking within that sentence, he was in equipoise on the variety of phenomena called the appearance of the profound. So, we've discussed what profound is, and that's generally understood as emptiness. As for the appearance of the profound, some commentators describe that as the pristine wisdom that directly realizes emptiness. Others say that the appearance refers to conventional phenomena. That's what's being indicated, whereas the profound refers to ultimate phenomena. And essentially, it's indicating that the presentation of conventional and ultimate phenomena exists within a single basis. So those are
Mm.
two explanations of appearance of the profound. So what are these varieties of phenomena, right? It's a meditative concentration on the varieties of phenomena. This refers to this particular meditative stabilization being a realization of emptiness that applies to all phenomena. So not just some phenomena, such as a pot and a pillar and so forth, but literally every phenomena that exists. So it's looking at the emptiness of all of them. So of course, I'm giving a word commentary, so it's good if you actually look at the text as I take you through it, right, of the Heart Sutra. So in Tibetan, we're actually working forward through the sentence. In English, as you can see, we're working backwards through the sentence. That's just because English and Tibetan grammar or syntax is opposite. So working back through that sentence, we get to the word meditative concentration. So that's understand as that practical meditative stabilization that is a calm abiding, right? Here it's an equipoise on emptiness. Now you might wonder, why is it that the Buddha is entering into a particular meditative concentration at this particular time? Because if one becomes a Buddha, one is always in meditative equipoise. There is no point in which you are not. That's one of the unique qualities of a Buddha. So here, as he presents appearances to ordinary disciples, he is showing that he is entering into meditation. At other times, he presents the aspect of going for alms rounds or giving teachings. Here, he's showing the appearance of entering into a meditation. So we finish that sentence, we move on. At that time as well, the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, the great being, clearly beheld the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom itself, and saw that even the five aggregates are empty of intrinsic existence. So at this point, the Buddha is on Vulture's Peak. He's entered into a particular meditation. And at that time, Avalokiteshvara was there as well. And similar to the Buddha, although Avalokiteshvara did not enter into the exact same meditative equipoise on emptiness, he entered into something similar. He started examining the nature of the five aggregates. And through his analysis, he saw that they were empty of intrinsic existence, or empty by way of their own character, or empty of true existence. It's all the same. This quote. He clearly beheld the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom. Clearly beheld, indicating that he non-erroneously, correctly beheld the true nature of the five aggregates. So at that time, the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, the Mahasattva. So there are many elements to his name and title that are worth discussing. First, it says at that time, which indicates it was the correct time to teach this particular Dharma to the intended disciples. Then we have the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva is an indication of conventional bodhicitta, and Mahasattva indicates a presence of a ultimate bodhicitta, which is a wisdom directly realizing emptiness. And Arya, or noble, as it's translated here, indicates that he is superior to hearers and so forth. With respect to his name, Avalokiteshvara, the Tibetans divide that up into Chenrezig and Wangchuk. So starting with the word Chenrezig or Avalokita, that indicates that he's looking, or his eyes are open. So how it's interpreted is that his eyes are always open, looking down on sentient beings and their suffering, and thus he is in the nature of compassion. So he has a special part of his name, which is this Ishvara, like Avalokiteshvara means Avalokita Ishvara, and this Ishvara, or Wangchuk in Tibetan, is a unique title given to this bodhisattva, which is not bestowed upon other bodhisattvas, and that's because Chenrezig or Avalokiteshvara possesses a special ability that other bodhisattvas don't. So him being the noble one indicates that he has the qualities of knowledge. Him being Avalokita or Chenrezig indicates he has the quality of compassion, and him being the Ishvara or Wangchuk indicates he has this quality of power. And this power is that although he is fully enlightened in reality, he emanates as a bodhisattva, and through doing so is able to tame myriad sentient beings. And there are lots of accounts in the sutras of him doing so. So one of those accounts is the 24th chapter of the sutra called the White Lotus of the Good Dharma. So this is been translated into English very well. It's on 84,000's website. And this 24th chapter is called Facing Everywhere, the Teaching of the Miracles of Avalokiteshvara. And in this chapter of the sutra, the Buddha is teaching the Dharma, and the Bodhisattva Akshayamati gets up from his seat. He pays homage to the Blessed One and he asks the Blessed One, why is the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Avalokiteshvara called Avalokiteshvara? Particularly, he's asking why he has this name Ishvara or Wangchuk, the powerful one. And the Buddha says to the Bodhisattva Akshayamati that it is because if sentient beings merely hear this Bodhisattva's name, it has the power to liberate them from suffering and so on and so forth. And therefore, he concludes with saying that you must honor and venerate this Bodhisattva. So it's a long chapter. It's a very beautiful account. It's nice if you can read it. So with respect to Avalokiteshvara's gender, of course, in the Indian tradition, he's usually depicted as male, and in the Chinese tradition, as Guanyin, the female bodhisattva. And I think both are fine, both are valid. There are accounts of Avalokiteshvara being male and female, and of course, a bodhisattva can emanate as whoever they want, as whichever gender they prefer. So it actually is fine whether he's depicted as male or female. So then we get back to the Heart Sutra. So here the Noble Avalokiteshvara is going to be in dialogue with Shariputra. So the person who is blessed by that meditative stabilization that the Blessed One has entered into is, of course, Shariputra. So the Buddha blesses Shariputra to understand the meaning of the profound. And of course, there are many ways you can bless a being. So a being can be blessed by speech, they can be blessed through the mind, or they can be blessed through the body or meditative stabilization. Here in this context, it's quite clear that he is being blessed by this particular meditative concentration that the Buddha has entered into. So reading down in the Heart Sutra, thereupon, through the Buddha's inspiration or his blessing, the Venerable Shariputra spoke to the Noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, the Mahasattva, and said, how should any noble son or noble daughter who wishes to engage in the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom train? So thereupon, through the Buddha's inspiration, Shariputra is now blessed. And although Shariputra is a arhat, right, and is depicted here as a hearer arhat, right, a Shravaka arhat, and he has therefore directly realized emptiness already. One might wonder, why does he need inspiration to understand or even ask this question? Well, it's because here arhats do not realize emptiness by way of limitless reasonings, right? So not in such a vast and extensive manner. And therefore he required some sort of impetus or inspiration that came from the Buddha's own side because he's not able to ask from his own side due to lacking that knowledge. So he's been blessed and he asks this question to Avalokiteshvara. Okay, so of course, Shariputra here presenting to the general audience as a hero arhat. Therefore, such a person would not be able, through their own ability, to ask such a question or think of such a question, therefore requiring the Buddha's inspiration. So not only just because he hasn't thought about emptiness from so many different angles, so many different reasonings, but because on the hero path he did not accumulate enough merit to even ask such a question. So Buddha blesses him and he asks Avalokiteshvara. But then someone might wonder, well, why doesn't he just ask the Buddha himself? Why is it a disciple asking another disciple? Well, here it just seems like a good opportunity for that to happen. The Buddha presents as if he has entered into meditative stabilization and gives an opportunity for one disciple to ask another a question through his
Mm,
blessings. Shariputra asks him, how does any noble son or noble daughter engage in the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom? So noble son or noble daughter refers to any male or female who is of Mahayana lineage. So how does one who has generated the mind towards enlightenment thus train in the profound perfection of wisdom, realizing emptiness, right? So it's also interesting that, at least in this version of the sutra, it mentions noble sons and noble daughters, because at that time in classical India, of course, women were not held in as high esteem as men. So here it is believed that they are both included to show that the Buddha didn't distinguish based on race or what is it, the classical groups that people were divided into, or according to sex. If somebody studies and practices in the correct way, they are equally able to achieve enlightenment. Now we get to the answer. So in the next paragraph, when this had been said, the holy Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, spoke to the venerable Shariputra and said, Shariputra, any noble son or noble daughter who so wishes to engage in the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom should clearly see in this way. And then it continues. So the first part of his answer to the question indicates how a noble son or daughter should train according to the path of accumulation and the path of preparation. So that's how the rest of the sutra is framed in the commentaries in terms of how does one train in the perfection according to which path one is on. So we're going in the context of looking at the answer of this question in terms of how someone on the path of accumulation would train. We're going to read up until the first full stop. So Shariputra, any noble son or daughter who wishes to engage in the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom should clearly see in this way. They should see perfectly that even the five aggregates are empty of intrinsic existence. So someone who has entered into the Mahayana path of accumulation, right? They've generated bodhicitta. They then need to train in understanding emptiness. So they first do so by listening to the meaning of the profound emptiness, and then they contemplate it, and then they realize it by way of a meaning generality. So a meaning generality is essentially a mental image. So it's a conceptual realization. And then they approach understanding this understanding of emptiness from many different angles using multiple different reasonings. And then they put that into practice and meditate on it. So, what is the particular meaning of emptiness that such a person on the path of accumulation trains in? Well, here it's given as that they should see perfectly that even the five aggregates are empty of intrinsic existence. So, not only the person that is imputed onto the five aggregates, but the five aggregates themselves too are empty of intrinsic existence. So here it's indicating the two selflessnesses, selflessness of persons and selflessness of phenomena. So according to the middle way consequentialists or prasangikas, they do not differentiate these two types of selflessness in terms of subtlety, right? The emptiness is the same. It's just the basis upon which one realizes that emptiness. So selflessness of persons is simply the lack of inherent existence or true existence of the person. And selflessness of phenomena is the lack of true existence or lack of inherent existence of the aggregates that they are imputed upon. So that is the unique position of the two selflessnesses according to middle way consequentialists, and you maintain that position as you move into tantric philosophy as well. So of course one starts from the path of accumulation, one realizes the two selflessnesses, which is that of persons and that of phenomena, and one approaches them from many angles of reasoning, right? Pure, faultless reasonings. And here it's translated as they should see perfectly the five aggregates in this way. In the Tibetan, it's a slightly different term, probably the Sanskrit too, that sort of clearly indicates that this is a conceptual realization, right? The way you're looking upon them now is through a meaning generality, right? This mental image in your mind, because one is yet to have a direct realization. So on the path of accumulation, of course, you haven't realized emptiness directly. You have this conceptual realization, and you maintain that into the path of preparation, and that meaning generality gets clearer and clearer and more subtle until it almost seems like it is a direct realization, and that is the continuum of mind that becomes the path of seeing. It turns into a direct realization of emptiness, and you essentially meditate on that further during the path of meditation and then up to Buddhahood. So, yeah, that essentially clarifies how the object appears to the path of accumulation, path of preparation, path of seeing. So that was the short answer, according to some commentaries. Now we get to the slightly uh, elongated answer to Shariputra's question, which is that form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form, form too is not other than emptiness. Likewise, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness are all empty. So let's start with form is emptiness. So
Okay.
essentially, this question,
Los, los, los.
Geshe is already ready to move on. So form as emptiness means that from form's mere establishment, it is not truly established. It's not established by way of its own characteristics and so on and so forth. From it merely coming into existence, right? It's not that even first form comes into existence and then at a later point its emptiness of true existence pops into existence. No, from its mere establishment, it is already empty of true existence. So this mode of emptiness is emptiness from its own side, right? There are other types of emptiness that are not applicable here, like the mode of emptiness of an empty house, right? An empty house can be furnished and filled up. Likewise, an empty mug can be filled with liquid. So it's not that type of emptiness that comes and goes or changes depending on the situation. As soon as that thing comes into existence, it is empty from its own side of being truly established. Um, does that mean that form does not exist at all? Since as soon as you say form is established, it is not established by way of its own character and so forth? No, form exists within form being empty. It appears and its conventional existence is tenable. So by saying form is emptiness, one negates the extreme of permanence, and by saying emptiness is form, one negates the extreme of annihilation. So within this part of the Heart Sutra, it's actually conveying its principal topic, which are the four profundities, which are exhibited by these four parts here. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form, emptiness is not other than form, form too is not other than emptiness. So these are called the four profundities. So emptiness is not other than form indicates that on a single basis, the two truths, which are conventional and ultimate truths, are one nature but separate isolates. They don't exist separately, right? They are of one nature on a single basis. So, so emptiness is not other than form, right? Indicating the two truths on one basis. Form too is not other than emptiness. So you cannot separate emptiness from form, and you cannot separate form from emptiness, right? They exist as one nature, different isolates, differently understood, but they are of one nature. So Geshe said, I'm giving you a very basic, concise explanation of these two phrases here. You could go into much more depth, but we won't. And likewise for feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousnesses, right? The other four aggregates, they're all empty in the same way. You can apply these four profundities to them in the exact same manner. So switch out the word form for feelings and say feelings are emptiness. Emptiness is not other than feelings. feelings too is not other than emptiness, right? And you
Mm.
can apply that to the other four aggregates or other three now. You can likewise apply that to the I, right? You can say, I am emptiness, emptiness is I, or emptiness is not other than I am not other than emptiness, and apply the four profundities to the I in this manner, indicating that the I does not exist self-sufficiently and independently of being imputed onto the basis of designations, which is the aggregates. And because it does not exist independently in that way, the I is an imputation, right? A dependently imputed phenomena onto the aggregates, and therefore I am empty. The I is an imputed existent, right? It imputedly exists. It is mere name. And out of the three types of dependent origination, which are causal dependent origination, dependently arisen based on its parts, and independent origination of being imputedly existent. Here, it's applying the logic of the second type of dependent origination, which is dependent origination independence on the parts. As Nagarjuna says in his Precious Garland, verse 80, a person is not earth, not water, not fire, not wind, not space, not consciousness, and not the collection of all of them. So what person is there other than these? Well, the self is imputed upon its basis, which are the five aggregates. Well, is that person which is imputed upon the basis of the five aggregates, or let's say also imputed upon these constituents of earth, water, fire, wind, and so on and so forth? It isn't them individually, and it isn't the collection of them. Yet, what person is there other than these? There isn't a person other than these, even though the person is not those, indicating that the person is merely dependently designated onto those. Nagarjuna continues by saying, just as a person is not real due to being a composite of six constituents, so each of the constituents also is not real due to being a composite. So this person that is imputed onto the collection of these six constituents is also not real or not truly existent, right? Because it's possible that some people hold an imputedly existent thing as truly existent. Well, it is not. And each of those constituents that it was imputed onto likewise are not real or not truly existent, right? So Nagarjuna is negating true existence here based on the logic of dependent origination, based on causality and based on its parts. So we've moved through the Heart Sutra to the point where Avalokiteshvara has indicated how someone on the path of accumulation and preparation should view emptiness, right? He's indicated that they should look at these four profundities and view emptiness in that way. And thus, through training and, let's say, in a sense, improving one's realization of emptiness, one eventually enters into the path of seeing, right? And then Avalokiteshvara tells Shariputra how one trains in emptiness while on the path of seeing, and he does so by way of these following 8 profundities. And now it starts to get a little bit complicated in terms of the commentary with respect to this presentation on how to train in the path of seeing. So Avalokiteshvara's words in the Heart Sutra are, therefore, Shariputra, all phenomena are emptiness. They are without defining characteristics. They are not born. They do not cease. They are not defiled. They are not undefiled. They are not deficient, and they are not complete. So these 8 are what are called the 8 profound emptinesses. So ancillary to this pithy paragraph here is a complicated commentary on these 8 profundities in terms of the uninterrupted path of the path of seeing and the liberated path of the path of seeing, realizing these 8. So when you get into the path literature, there are 8 types of or 8 types or 8 aspects of the uninterrupted path of the path of seeing, and 8 aspects of the liberated path of the path of seeing that follows that uninterrupted path. And the first 8 pertaining to the uninterrupted path are called the 8 forbearances. The second 8 pertaining to the liberated path are called the 8 knowledges. So essentially, what the commentators are saying is that each of those 8 are actually realizing these 8 profundities as presented here. So that's one way that the commentators approach this. Another is that these 8 are condensed into the presentation of the 3 doors of liberation. So first, let's stick to the words in the Heart Sutra itself and approach them at face value here. So all phenomena are emptiness. Here, meaning that all phenomena are empty. Why? Because they are dependently arisen, right? They are dependent originations. They are without defining characteristics, meaning they don't have inherent characteristics. So essentially, here, wherever it says they are without this or they are not this, it means they are not inherently this or that, right? So they are not born, meaning they do not arise from their own side. They do not inherently arise. Likewise, they do not inherently cease. They are not defiled. So defilements exist, but they do not exist inherently. So here, there is no, or it is without, all refers to there being no, what is negated essentially is, I'm mixing up my words now, sorry. So what are they without? We're negating the object of negation by saying they are without this or that. So the object of negation being inherent existence. So they are not inherently this or that. So here, they are not defiled means that there are no inherently existing defilements, and the defilements here are posited as the thoroughly afflicted class of phenomena, which we would posit as true origins out of the Four Noble Truths. And they are not undefiled means there is no inherently existent undefiled phenomena. And the undefiled here are, of course, the thoroughly purified class of phenomena, so the true paths. There are no inherently existent true paths. And it says they are not deficient and they are not complete. This is, of course, translated in different ways. But here, deficiency is referring to a decrease in something. Something has not been decreased. And this is referring to the decrease in the defilements to the point of exhaustion. So they have not been exhausted inherently, right? Defilements, or one might apply this to true sufferings, are not inherently exhausted. And where it says they are not complete, this refers to qualities or paths that are improved upon limitlessly up till enlightenment, such as minds of compassion or bodhicitta or realizations of emptiness that are enhanced to a point of completion, right? Or perfection, right? They're not perfected, one could say, inherently, right? There's no inherent exhaustion and there is no inherent perfection. And therefore, a bodhisattva who has attained the path of seeing must practice these 8 emptinesses by way of the 3 doors to liberation. So essentially, we're going to categorize these 8 into where they fit with regards to the 3 doors to liberation. So the first, saying that all phenomena are emptiness, refers or pertains to the emptiness door of liberation. The next 5, that they are without defining characteristics, they are not born, they do not cease, they are not defiled, and they are not undefiled, pertains to the signlessness door of liberation. And the last two, that they are not deficient and they are not complete, pertain to the wishlessness door of liberation. So a bodhisattva therefore practices these 8 profundities. So they realize them, and through realizing them, what do they abandon, right? Because there are a portion of abandonments of the path of seeing that need to be eradicated. So what those are the 112 intellectually acquired afflictive obscurations and the 108 intellectually acquired cognitive obscurations. So essentially, through the path of seeing, one destroys all intellectually acquired obscurations. So, in order to achieve the victorious state of omniscience, one essentially has to abandon 2 types of abandonments. So, in terms of the path, we categorize those abandonments as those abandonments that pertain to the path of seeing, right? Its portion, and the portion of abandonments that are dealt with by the path of meditation, right? So when one first generates a path of seeing, what it actually is a direct antidote. It's called the uninterrupted path. And its job is to counter its portion of abandonments, which are all the intellectually acquired obscurations. Then, after one has done so, one then goes back into meditative equipoise and gives rise to the path of meditation. And it has to deal with 9 rounds of objects of abandonment of the path of meditation, of increasing subtlety. Right, so this is what the intended disciple of the Heart Sutra is supposed to do, right? This is their process. Whether that is us, right? Whether we are the intended disciples of the Heart Sutra, that's undecided. But if somebody is, then understanding this text, they proceed by developing wisdoms arisen from hearing and contemplation, right? Analyzing the 5 aggregates and understanding that they are empty of inherent existence on the path of accumulation. Then on the path of preparation, primarily they are generating wisdoms arisen from meditation that realize emptiness through way of a meaning generality, right? A mental image. Then that mental image, through persistent meditation, decreases, and eventually one attains a direct realization of emptiness, which is then the path of seeing. And that direct realization of emptiness that you start with on the path of seeing is the uninterrupted path, which is the antidote to all of those objects of abandonment just described, right? The intellectually acquired ones. So you start with this uninterrupted paths, which by aspect, if you are a Mahayana practitioner, is 8 forbearances. One then achieves the liberated path, which is basically the result of that. You've abandoned those, and now you have these 8 knowledges. Then you continue with that meditative equipoise on emptiness because you still have the innate afflictions to abandon before you achieve Buddhahood. So then you train in the path of meditation in 9 rounds up until enlightenment. Awesome. Okay. So then we move down through the Heart Sutra onto our next section, which is training in the path of meditation. This is essentially what it is showing the disciple next. So this next part of it is commented on by dividing it into 2 sections: the mode of training on the path of meditation in general, and the mode of training in the causal diamond-like absorption. So this is as presented by Jamyang Gawilodro in his commentary. So Avalokiteshvara continues his answer and says, therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feelings, no perceptions, no mental formations, and no consciousness. There is no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, and no mind. There is no form, sound, smell, and so on and so forth. So he starts negating the existence of a whole bunch of phenomena. And here is where we get to these 51 categories of phenomena that I mentioned in a previous class. So they are, if you count them, the 5 aggregates, the 호몽아 기치 중니 감중이라
부모가요로 부모가시 아니 제주 중이지 감쪽이지 근데 연락 중이지
감족이야.
lem바시 감쪽이로
Okay, let's go on. 5 aggregates, the 12 sources, the 18 constituents, the 12 links of dependent origination, and the 4 noble truths. So essentially, on these 51 bases, you have 51 emptinesses. So it seems a little bit repetitive. It says, therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feelings, which is similar to what was said before. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form, emptiness not other than form. It seems quite similar, but before, in the context of the path of accumulation and preparation, the point was that one negates form existing inherently. Here, the point is not to negate form existing inherently. We've already done that. Here, it's saying in emptiness, there is no form, feelings, and so forth, meaning, in this context of the path of meditation, that from the perspective of a meditative equipoise of the path of meditation, directly realizing emptiness, there is no appearance of form, no appearance of feeling. There is no conventional phenomena that appears. So here we're talking about a direct realization of emptiness that is a path of meditation. So that could be an uninterrupted path, or here it's not specified. But let's say it's an uninterrupted path, for example, of the path of meditation. To that, there is no form, right? To that meditative equipoise, there are no feelings. To that, there are no perceptions, and so forth, right? And then it says there is no I element, and so on, up to no mind element. So the intended disciple of the Heart Sutra has thus far moved from the path of accumulation to the path of preparation to the path of seeing, and is now learning how to train in the path of meditation. So the path of meditation starts from the first ground, right? It is the last part of the first ground, and then it continues up to before Buddhahood. Its object has no conventional appearance, right? What appears to that meditation is only emptiness. There is no conventional appearance, and a conventional appearance would be form, feeling, and so on and so forth. So that's how one should apply the understanding of this verse, that to such a mind, it's like pouring water into water. It's really hard to understand, even intellectually, what to think about when you're presented with words like in emptiness there is no form, no feelings, and so on and so forth. Fundamentally, emptiness is an extremely profound and subtle object. Therefore, it's really hard for beginners like us to get a correct idea about it and correctly know how to think about it, right? And therefore, even more difficult that we could go on to meditate on it. And this isn't our fault. This is just the nature of this object, right? When the Buddha first achieved enlightenment, he famously said, I have found the meaning of this profundity, right? This emptiness that is free of elaborations and so forth. But who else could understand such a thing? Therefore, I will remain silent in the forest. And because he did not find anyone to teach emptiness to, he just remained silent because there was really no one who could understand it. So this is the nature of the topic we're dealing with. It is very difficult, but don't feel despondent about that. There are things you can do about it in order to help yourself understand it. So you can engage in accumulating merit, in particular, accumulating the collection of pristine wisdom by reciting the Heart Sutra and meditating on emptiness to the best of your ability here and there, occasionally. And in that way, eventually, although you might not have a realization of emptiness, you'll have a correct assumption of emptiness. If anybody has a question,
Can you hear me? Sorry.
I can hear you. Yep.
I don't know where's my mic. Sorry.
That's
So,
good.
yeah, I'd like to ask Geshe whether can elaborate a bit on the consciousness of the form, those, hold on,
The
form.
consciousness aggregate,
Yes,
or
yes, yes, yes,
so forms, feelings, perceptions, consciousness. So that one,
yes,
consciousness.
yeah.
Okay.
Form, all those feelings and such are still more or less perceivable, understandable, but consciousness is, I think, is totally off. No idea why consciousness is also empty. How do
Uh,
we? Maybe it's a definite. We need a definition of what consciousness is. Yeah, maybe that will help.
okay. Okay. It's a good question. I would have thought that the aggregate of consciousness would be something more easy to um, conceptualize because it is that thing that is present when we think, I go, I eat, I drink, right? It's this thought, I'm doing something. It is this thought, right? That is consciousness. And therefore, I mean, since it's a consciousness, it is concomitant or goes along with these mental factors. Um, and that is essentially the definition of a consciousness. It is that mind that is concomitant rather with the mental factors in its retinue, right? So they always go together, mind and mental factors. So try to try to think of it in this way, right? You have the thought of I, right? You have this conception of self, right? I go and so forth. Just analyze it. Is it virtuous? Is it non-virtuous? Is it neutral? What is it, right? And try to sort of understand this amorphous, non-physical thing in that way, right? You can get an idea of it. It's present with you all the time, right? Consciousness is always present with you. It should be something that you can easily recognize in a sense. But yeah, that's the definition. And then, of course, you have six uh, collections of consciousness or primary consciousness. The eye primary consciousness, the nose primary consciousness, ear, the tongue, the physical, and then the mental primary consciousness, right?